everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to begin a 4-part series on how to use Tradytics to find notable tickers using their vast amount of Discord and website tools to begin putting together a watch list that you can filter down and execute on the following morning. Once you've used these tools to build your initial list, it's extremely important you research them further to only pick the best of the best. I put out a video on July 14th, 2022 explaining how to develop this conviction. Once the list is narrowed down to 1 to 4 of your best choices, make sure you watch the video I put out on July 11th, 2022 that goes in how you can execute these trade ideas like a professional trader. Before we get started, if you'd like to get a 10% discount for Tradytics, don't forget to use my referral link in the description. You'll also find referral links for TradingView and Top Step funded trader programs that will give us both discounts. Lastly, if you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like and subscribe to help me grow the channel. So with all that being said, let's get right into it. Now, the first thing I want to talk about in part 1 of this video is Discord commands and live flow tips. And so the Discord commands I want to highlight in particular are what you see here, which is algo flow divergences, which basically shows a list of tickers that shows divergence from algo flow, meaning that price is moving in the opposite direction of algo flow. The top flow command shows all the top bullish and bearish flow. Sorry for the typo there. Big movers, which you can filter by cap size, which is nice. The hot chains for both calls and puts, and then sector rotations, which can be useful, especially if you break a sector down further and you want to analyze it a bit to pick the best names within that sector. And the way you would run these commands is, if you're a premium member of Tradytics, you can jump in their Discord, which is included in your subscription price, and you can run the commands that I've shown here, which this is actually one of my favorites, the algo flow divergences command. When you run this, you'll get a list, and as I said, so algo flow is a tool developed by Tradytics that takes all the flow data that they've gathered and gives you an idea of where price is headed to based on that flow data. It's an extremely useful tool, and actually this one I get a ton of trade ideas from, and actually 2 of my trade ideas going into this upcoming Monday. Today's July 16th, 2022. It's a Saturday, so 2 days from now, I'm going to be executing on Disney puts and Microsoft calls. And I want to be clear, I didn't just do that from this list. This helped me spot these plays. And then, based on the video that I put out on July 14th, I narrowed it down and realized that I built an extreme amount of conviction around these plays. And then, so at that point, Monday before open, I just need to plot what my entry levels will be and my price targets will be, and then I'll be ready to execute these trades. But algo flow divergences is extremely useful for getting some initial ideas. Also, we can do T-top flow to see tickers that had the most amount of flow on both sides, and this should be no surprise. Based on Friday, we saw names like QCOM, Nvidia, Meta really moving, and then there was a lot of bearish flow coming in for these names. Now, it was more of a bullish day, so there were a lot of names that ended up receiving a lot of bullish flow, but at the end of the day, it actually looks like a lot of bearish flow started coming in, hence the divergences that we previously saw. And these are always good names to go through on both sides, and I tend to favor whichever side. So, like, as I said, this past Friday was a bullish day, so assuming there can be some sort of continuation, assuming that we're not hitting some sort of cap based on gamma exposure and things like that, then I tend to favor the call side. But I'll never write off a good bearish position as well. I mean, I do try to be as thorough as possible. We can also take a look at big movers by cap size, and this is nice because if you like playing small caps, I personally don't, because usually there's not a lot of options liquidity there, so it's really easy. There's wide bid-ask spreads when you enter these positions for scalps, and it can be very dangerous. It could start you off, even if you get a good move and like a great entry, you can still start off down, which I don't like. But despite that, you can see it for small caps, mid-size caps, and then you can even see it for large caps, which this is high caps, so the command is T-big movers H. But this is another great way to see, okay, which tickers move the most that day in terms of price movement, and then you can further assess flow to see if you can, there might be the flow and the chart to see if there could be potential for a continuation there. I also like seeing hot chains. Now this is actually a command that I'll sometimes run intraday to see which contracts are getting the most amount of, which chains are getting the most amount of attention, the most amount of volume essentially. And I mean, it shows you the volume here, which is pretty significant obviously when you're talking about things like SPY, Apple, Amazon, and you can, it tells you if the premiums were net bullish or bearish. And if you were paying attention to these hot chains, you could have, even if you may have not noticed it initially, you could have jumped on the bandwagon for a name like Amazon. It just had a fantastic day. And then the same thing goes for seeing the other side, which would be put flow. And we can see here these names. And now it's important also to rule out ETFs. There's a lot of hedging that can go on. I'm not saying that all the flow activity you see on ETFs such as SPY, QQQ, and IWM is only hedging, but it takes a lot of experience to get good at determining if it's a speculative play or a hedge play. So I tend to ignore ETFs when I see them here, and XLFs including that. That's a sector ETF. Although it's worth noting that, you know, if you see a sector ETF that's bearish, then what I like to do is look at those underlying names. Like for XLF, it would be JPM or Goldman Sachs or any of these banks to see if there's something, some of the underlying tickers that might be driving that bullish or bearish sector flow. So looking at the hot chains is nice, especially for intraday, as I mentioned. And then also jumping on the sector thing, we can look at sector rotations for a specific amount of time. This would be sector rotations based on the last 15 days, the cumulative change in net calls versus net puts. And we can see that growth stocks lately have been sort of hot with technology, utilities, consumer discretionary, healthcare. And then again, you can just dig down into these sectors further. Like for instance, if you like healthcare names, you could look at Moderna or NVAX or AbbVie, different big names within the sectors that tend to get a lot of attention. And so those are the Discord commands that I like to use in order to build up a watch list that I can go into further. And then once I run those Discord commands, if I also like assessing live flow. Now there's certain filters I use for live flow, and it's important, like there's no one size fits all, and live flow is an extraordinarily powerful tool, and it's something that takes some time getting used to reading. But once you get good at it, once you fully understand what you're looking at, it can be so powerful for spotting names. Now what I always like doing, because I'm an intraday trader, I'm purely focused on day trades typically, and I usually take those trades within the first 90 minutes before moving on to ETFs such as SPY, QQQ, and IWM, which goes with that framework video that I mentioned now. So the filters I use are short expiry, non-ETF, and then I do exclude symbols. So if I've already put names like Tesla and Apple and Microsoft and Nvidia and all those big names that typically pop up all over the flow, I'll exclude those when I look at the live flow to get other ideas. And then also and I use live flow as well for developing conviction, what I talked about in another video, so I'm not going to get into that, but you can search for specific tickers and help develop conviction further. And then once you land on a cap size, like for instance, if you're looking at Apple, filtering by premiums is a good idea, right? So you might want to say minimum premium for these plays can be 100,000, but if you're looking at a stock that's a smaller cap size or also just smaller price in general, keep in mind that 100K premium might be too much. You might filter out all notable activity. So it's really important to experiment with different premium sizes. So like if I wanted to make sure I keep names that are usually hot, like Roblox on the live flow, then I wouldn't want to set my minimum premiums to 100,000. I'd want to set it to maybe 15,000 or 20,000 just to make sure I don't exclude good information. And then lastly, you can filter for sweeps, splits, and blocks. Now, sweeps and splits are very similar. So sweeps will happen. Basically it's a huge amount of call buying across multiple exchanges where they're just going through and literally sweeping up a bunch of option chains, and usually it's a good indication of looking like this big money, smart money is planning to grab these option contracts for some sort of anticipation of a big directional move. And so let me just jump in the dashboard here and show what I'm talking about. So on the website, if you go to flow and then live options flow, we can go in here, and so here, as I mentioned, we can do short expiry, non-ETF, and then, like as I mentioned, because you'll see all the time that names like Tesla and Apple and AMD and Microsoft, they'll pop up all the pretty frequently. Also up here, this is where you can set the minimum premiums that I was referring to. So let's say, okay, we've already assessed Apple, Microsoft, Meta, all the big names that you typically see. We want to exclude those. You can go up here and you can start excluding symbols. And once we add in, so I'll just add in a few here. I'm not going to do all of them, but I just want to show you how to use this properly. So we'll exclude Apple, Microsoft. We always want to make sure we exclude Tesla if we're not planning on playing that, because that's what pops up all over. And I'm just basically going, and we can always add more as we go. And for now, so I'll add these names right here. And then what you can do is click exclude symbols. And then now we have a more narrowed down list. And then of course, if I was only looking for large cap stocks, like so names like QCOM, where the spot price is 144.44, when we're looking at premiums around 43,000, that might not be that significant. So we might want to, in this case, let's say we'll bump it up to premiums 80,000 or more. And actually, I just did that under max premium, so make sure you don't make that mistake here. And then also you can choose different stock prices, and I'll show you what I mean. So if we're looking at this would be more high dollar names, right? So we want to see things that stand out to us, like for instance, looking at IBM, and we can see that there were some large premiums above $80,000 here, and it looks like this was likely some call selling because it was at the bid side. This could still be called selling when it's to ask if it's closer to the ask side, but it's not at the ask side, so this still could be call selling, which goes in line with this. Then we see a put, which is somewhere in between, which could indicate put buying. This again closer to the bid side, but sort of in the middle, so that could be put buying or selling. And then as I mentioned, if you want to filter that down further, so we wanted to get a closer look at IBM, we can just filter for IBM up here and look at the notable flow. And then if, okay, maybe we're filtering out too much data. Now right here we can see, this are the sweeps I was talking about. So we see these put sweeps coming in, which is an indication of looking for some sort of bearish sentiment. And again, we really need to make sure we assess these using all the tools I talk about in that conviction video from July 14th. But we can also drop down these premiums a little bit to see if anything else that's notable shows up. So I'll drop it down to 50,000 and see if that gives me a little more information. And then let me just back out of IBM here, because I also want to show, like, if I'm looking for stocks that are less expensive than some of these names, I can say, okay, stocks that are $25 to $75, and then now I want to make sure that I drop my minimum premiums down to 25,000, just to make sure that I don't filter out any good potential names here. And you can see, and then even though I'm saying non-ETFs, we'll still see like sector ETFs pop up, which you may or may not want. So like if I'll exclude energy here as well, just to show you. And then it's worth noting that once you've already said exclude symbols and you add a new symbol M in there, make sure you unclick it and then click it again, and then that filter will apply. So now that we've done that, and this might be why XLE was popping up. I mean, we could see some calls being purchased on Oxy and BP. And again, if we want further insight into that information, we should filter these tickers specifically, and we can see it actually appears to be at a little bit of a mix here. So we have some potentially call buying and some call selling. And again, going into the options dashboard, we could help narrow that down further. But anyway, the idea is we just want to narrow down names and see if anything stands out repeatedly. and we want to just make sure that we don't set our premiums too high if the stock price is lower. There's never one size fits all for premiums. If you go in, and you can see like how barely any of these notable call flow for a ticker like Oxy, where the stock price is somewhere around $58 typically. That if we were to filter for 100K above, we would literally see nothing. So it's just, I mean, we might see one or two, but it would filter out a lot of good information for us. So, and then also, I'm never one to say like, okay, I only want to see things that are bought or sold or just calls and puts. I really want to see all the information and then make a determination from there. But that being said, I do sometimes like going in and just looking for sweeps initially, just looking for splits initially, and just looking for blocks as well, just to see if it helps shed some insight. And actually, let me just get rid of Oxy here. So we have our price filter, we have our minimum premium filter, and then what can be notable sometimes is starting with the sweeps, see if we see a name that's just getting swept a whole bunch in a row. Like we see a lot of sweeps happening on C here, and I mean, you can go through this yourself and look through it, and of course you might have to bump up premiums to filter a little bit more, and that's what I was talking about, playing with these to get a little bit of a feel to help filter out some of that noise, playing with the minimum premiums, just being cautious not to go too high. And then so you know, this can certainly help give a lot of good trade ideas, but also help build conviction around trades. It's live flow is just such a powerful tool in general, but it's also, there's also a learning curve here. It's not the easiest tool, and if you're not careful, you can actually miss some ideas that you would have otherwise seen with some of the other tools, which I'll cover in future videos. So that's all I really wanted to cover for this video. If we go, so once you build this initial watch list, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, it's important to then check the chart using your favorite strategy, whether it be volume price analysis on multiple time frames. So look at the daily, look at the 1 hour, 30 minutes, so on and so forth. Get an idea on if this is a valid play, and then of course build conviction with this video. I was talking about build the best watch list using options flow data, which will help you really narrow it down to 1 to 4 of the names. So say if you start using these tools, you found maybe 15 names on your watch list, really try to narrow it down to like the top 3, and this video will help you do that. And then lastly, if you once you're ready to execute that watch list the following day, please check out this pro trading framework video. It's such a powerful framework that I learned from professional traders. I use it myself every single morning, and you can just help really narrow these trades that you put in your high conviction watch list. So that's all I wanted to cover in this video. This is part 1 in the series, and very soon I will be releasing part 2, and thanks for watching.